Well, hello everyone. I'm Colleen, and this is Robin is here. Say
Hi,
hi, Robin.
everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Our Reiki Lifestyle podcast. We're so excited, Molly, to have you back. We have had Molly McCord back several times previously on our podcast. She's a professional astrologer. She's been studying and practicing for over 30 years. She's an author and an intuitive astrologer podcaster, which, by the way, definitely listen to her podcast. And Molly, I'm going to have you say what all of your different, like your website and Instagram and stuff when you start. Um, but her podcast, Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord, is really good, you guys. It's something that you definitely want to connect in with. So anyway, I'm going to just go ahead and start with Molly. Our topic today is going to be 2025 astrological influences. And so I know we all want to hear about that. So, Molly, welcome. I'm so glad you're here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Robin. And hello, everybody. It's always a joy to be in conversation with you about the energies, about astrology, and just to connect with your awesome audience of listeners. So thank you for having me back. And I'm also excited about what we're moving into here in 2025, especially as it applies to many of you who are in the world of energy work. You are healers, readers, intuitives. You are aware of how we are evolving energetically. And 2025 is going to bring up how we actually implement and integrate more healing practices into our daily lives. So we are going to be moving into some powerful big energies this year. It's a lot to break down, but I wanted to make sure it was digestible for you and to really touch on what would benefit you at a personal level. So, should I just get right into it,
Well,
Colleen?
before you do, just
Okay,
go ahead and tell people your website, how to contact you, your podcast. It's easier if you say it than I try to
of course.
read it all.
Yes, so my website is mollymccord.online, and you can find me on YouTube at Molly McCord Astrology, as well as my podcast. As Colleen mentioned, Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. I've been doing that since 2011. Yes, I can't believe it's almost 14 years of being a podcaster, but I love it. And it is found on all the major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all the places you listen. So do check that out. And I did want to mention really quick that I have a new book coming out on December
Oh,
3rd, called
by
Soul
the
Growth.
way, oh,
Yeah,
Molly,
it's called Soul
I'm so
Growth
excited.
Astrology. Um, it's December 3rd, paperback ebook, and it's based on the 12 astrology signs of the zodiac and offers you exercises, tips, insights, client stories, and recommendations for consciously working with your exercise, with your energy, and growing into more of the higher vibrational expressions of each sign. So it's designed to be a grounding guide for these big energies that we're moving into. So I forgot to mention that, but yes, that's coming up in December too.
Where do people get that?
So you can find Soul Growth Astrology on Amazon as a paperback or an ebook. It's available worldwide. It's also in bookstores, some bookstores, and anywhere you buy books online as well. So yes, that is
Great. Well,
the new release.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
exciting. I'll have to
Thank
pick
you.
that up.
I'm excited about it. I just feel like it has very practical, gentle tips for how to work with our energy. It's not these like demanding, difficult things we have to change. It's just like simple, gentle ways of improving ourselves so that we are in our higher expression more often and more regularly.
Well, and that's perfect also for our listeners because that is, one of the main reasons we work with Reiki. is to help us access those higher frequencies. And because astrologically there are the higher and the lower frequencies also of all of the different energies, how do we get there? How do we get to the higher ones and live in that place?
And to be loving to ourselves, to be kind
Mhm.
about it, because we're not perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. But as long as we try our best and just practice implementing some new ways of being, that becomes our new reality. That becomes the new normal. So that was one of the guiding principles here in the book, so that people could have very concrete ways of doing that with the higher frequencies. So yes, I'm very excited about this book, and it is made for beginners and more intermediate. So if you're brand new to astrology, you're not going to have any problem understanding it. If you are more advanced, the idea is you take each of the signs and apply it to every planet in your chart so that it can be all of those astrology signs. So I muted myself
No
when I
Oh,
problem.
felt my
okay.
coughing, coming on. So, and I tried to duck out of the camera. So yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen again, but
No problem.
I didn't want it to stop what we were saying either. So
Well, somebody asked, we talk about real life Reiki, and somebody asked what we mean by that. And I thought, this, you know,
yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's this. Like
It's this.
you have a cold today and, you've been dealing with it and coughing, and it's okay on a podcast if we are just living what is true today.
Exactly. And being real about it and not trying to, you know, make it something it's not. So yes, thank you for that acceptance. And I feel like that's also that takes us into 2025 actually, because as we move into the year, we're going to have a lot of Pisces energies as we start 2025. And so if you follow along in your astrology chart, you're going to look at where you have late degrees of Pisces, which is where we're going to have Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node, all in these late degrees of Pisces, as well as a Venus retrograde in Aries into Pisces. So the focus on Pisces energies opens up more of what we are completing, releasing, and letting go of. But this is a master class in Pisces, and there's more intensity here with Saturn in the mix, because Saturn is our physical world. Saturn is our 9 to 5. It's our commitments, our responsibilities. Saturn is obviously what we have to take care of, what people rely on us for. And Saturn in Pisces, working with Neptune, brings about significant changes in where we want to direct our energy. So as the year begins, and even I would say it's really the first 3 to 4 months of 2025, we're going to be looking at, does this really serve me? Do I really want to take this forward? Is this really still where I want to invest my energy? Or am I wildly exhausted? Have I just been trying my best and it's taking a lot out of me? I feel more depleted than energized. So we're going to have to be very honest with ourselves around what needs to change, especially for assessing our health. How is this affecting my mental health, my physical health, my financial well-being, my intuitive self, my daily energy, all of it? And it's going to be a time of letting go of what you're realizing you've taken it as far as you can go. It's run its course. It's time to shift. Now, this energy strengthens into acceptance because we also have the influence of Neptune in Pisces. Neptune rules Pisces and has been in Pisces since 2011. In 2025, after 14 years in Pisces, Neptune moves in to Aries, and that is going to open us up to new starts. This happens the end of March. March 30th, 2025. And we're going to feel that we're being directed and called into a new beginning, into a new start in our lives, in ourselves, in our energy. You could feel this in your work, where you're done with one part of your career or something in your practice or your offerings. You could feel that you're ready for something more interesting or to call in a new approach, a new perspective, something new. And so as the year unfolds, we have a sense of what we have outgrown, because now we're coming into fuller contact with the new starts. And the new starts are not only Neptune entering Aries, but Saturn enters Aries in late May. So Saturn and Neptune are finalizing Pisces, moving into Aries. Then they both planets come back into Pisces towards the end of 2025. And then in 2026, they fully move into Aries. So 2025 is going to have a sense of your intuitively and energetically understanding what's completing for you, because that next adventure, that next chapter is calling you forward. But there's still things to take care of. There could be a sense of maybe a false start, maybe a sense of, let me test this out, see how it works, and then reassess. There's this ebbing and flowing that unfolds throughout 2025 as we understand, I know one thing is done. I have an idea or an inspiration of what is next, but it's not fully here yet. It hasn't fully arrived. So we are moving in between timelines. We are having these overlapping understandings of ourselves, of both what we're outgrowing and what we're moving into. And I think that a lot of people are going to feel that they're being gently guided into this new part of their life as they understand what they have to close out and finish up. So that's one of the main energies of the year, of both Saturn and Neptune moving back and forth between the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aries energies for all of us.
Well, that's really significant and good to know.
It's a big deal because
Yeah.
Saturn takes 30 years to move around all 12 astrology signs. Saturn spends about 2.5 to 3 years in each sign. And so here Saturn is starting at the beginning of the zodiac again. So moving into Aries, beginning a whole new chapter, a whole new 30-year cycle. And then concurrently, Neptune shifting into Aries is an even bigger deal, because Neptune takes 162 to 165 years to move through the full zodiac.
Yeah.
So we haven't had Neptune in Aries for 165 years. So there's a big cycle on the planet closing out, 165-year cycle on the planet ending and beginning, and it's syncing up with Saturn, our physical world, again, our experiences on a daily level. And this makes it more influential. This makes it a bigger deal of what is ending on our planet and then what we're moving into. And the energies we're moving into are a renaissance, are very sparkly and exciting. And there's a lot going on that's going to feel very activating. And you know, we're in this avant-garde territory of anything's possible. And we have these new technologies, and it opens up our creativity. But at the same time, there's a sense of a part of our world is closing out, a part of our lives are complete. And there's, you know, we have to honor what that means. Like, that can be emotional, that can bring up some things that, you know, oh, I didn't realize how much I loved that, or I didn't realize how much I took something for granted. There is an energy here that, I mean, just to be honest, it can be a grief and a sadness, a sorrow around what is transitioning and leaving. And that's where I feel a lot of the energy work is going to be needed, and where we're going to be called to doing energy work more often and more frequently, because we need that energetic self-care.
Well, and collectively, as we are doing that too, to help, through even being community, through, of course, beginning with our own lives and then our families and loved ones, but moving into community and then moving into the global perspective, that I really do feel right now this is what I can do in the
Yeah.
world, because there's a lot as we transition, and I know there is a lot of grief right now that is happening around the world and in the United States, and celebration on the other hand. So there's a lot of big energies happening. And
Yeah.
so, for me, the question is always, well, what can I do?
Yeah.
First of all, for me, so the mantra, stay stable, be kind,
Mm.
is very empowering for me, to
Yeah.
help me orient, like,
Yeah.
okay, here's my foundation point. And then I think what you're saying is having the opportunity to really observe these changes and allow for the emotions that may be there, but also to stay conscious so that there's a certain amount of clarity in observing this particular cycle, knowing that it's universal. So it's global, it's
Yeah.
personal, and it's collective.
Yes. Yes. And to honor your own self-care, to honor what you're feeling as being valid and appropriate, and to take care of what you're going through responsibly. I feel that we're moving into more people recognizing the energetic support they need. That we're going to need more regular energetic support from each other. And like you said, Colleen, the community is important. Knowing, well, where do I go when I need support, or when I need to connect, or where do I go just to remember I belong? I'm meant to be here. I'm a worthy individual at this time on the planet, that even if I feel like I'm just one person, I'm part of a mass collective of consciousness. There's a sense here of being able to also go higher, to find our common frequencies in the higher realms of compassion, of respect, of honor and love for others, that take us above the everyday and the physical, that reminds us that, we're all here in lesson, and we're all here learning, and we're all here doing the best we can with what our souls have set up, if that's what you believe, and that we can rise above, the temporary fleeting experiences of our physical world, and go into unity consciousness. And that is one of the gifts of strong Pisces energy. So that can be a worthwhile practice and remembrance of how you are needed, and that your energy is valuable, but make sure you take care of it. Make sure that you're honoring what you're feeling, you're running it through yourself in a healthy way, and that you're being very honest with yourself about the support you need, because with Pisces, we can be so giving and so empathetic, and how can I be of service to others? And that's something that a lot of healers naturally go into, like that's our default mode. But there's going to need to be this coming back to yourself and checking in on what is best for you. And so that brings me to another astrological influence of the year, where we're going to see Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system, move into Cancer on June 9th, 2025. And it moves from the very curious, dynamic, busy energy of Gemini into the softer, receptive, let me take a break energy of Cancer. Cancer is associated with home, family, kids, parents, where you go at the end of the day, where you allow yourself to feel safe, nurtured. It's your favorite food and a good meal. Cancer is the kitchen and the living room and just feeling literally at home. And this energy wants to return us also to our hearts, to our connection to our feelings, because we can be so much in our heads, on our phones, busy, and we are disconnected from what we really feel. I'm also calling this the return to HGTV, which here in the US is home and garden television. And so you could be inspired, to redecorate or do something fresh and new in an area of your home, to look at what is best for what you need right now. Jupiter in Cancer wants us also to feel comfortable in ourselves, in who you really are. No masks, no fake appearances, no need to just be something in order to maybe appear a certain way to other people. This is the energy of like, if you're coming into my home, this is how I live. This is who I am. This is what I look like. These are my slippers. This is my shirt. Like it's a very, very like authentic, simple, everyday energy that reminds us of our authentic lifestyles. So Jupiter in Cancer is going to expand these energies. It's going to reconnect us to what feels good, and to where we need to go at the end of the day, not only for self-care and comfort, but to relax and exhale and ease into, the goodness of right now without feeling like our energy is always out there or always has to be on the move. So this is the energy too of slowing down, which is something we were touching on before we started recording.
It's interesting too, because if it's going to happen in the summer, it here, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, that's usually a hard time for people to slow down. So how long you said that these planets are going to shift signs and then they're going to retrograde back? About how long is that period, since they're, some of the outer planets, so those processes are usually a little longer?
They're longer. Yeah. So they're in the sign. So Saturn and Neptune will both be in Aries for about 5 to 6 months.
Okay.
So a good middle portion of the year. And then by the end of the year, they go back into Pisces. So the middle of the year, let's say springtime in the Northern Hemisphere to late fall is when they're in Aries. And so that's when that new energy is heightened and strongest. I'm trying not to overwhelm people with a bunch of dates and just like more broad strokes. But yeah, so the energy really picks up like September into fall, and then it goes back into Pisces by the end of the year.
Is
Both planets.
Neptune one of those planets kind of like Pluto that will, first of all, how long is it in Aries? But is it one of those that kind of crosses over your degrees, generally speaking, a few times when it retrogrades and stuff? Pluto's usually 3 times, right? I mean, I
Yes.
know it can't be said for every single person, but
and that's on average, because sometimes it's longer. So with Neptune, a Neptune transit, meaning Neptune moving back and forth over a degree point, can last for 2 years.
okay.
So it's a very slow, gradual ebb and flow. Neptune is the ocean waves. It's that gradual process of removing, dissolving, transcending, because Neptune takes away the physical. And so that we can surrender into the higher understandings, the higher frequencies that are energetic, emotional, intuitive, and spiritual. Those are the domains of Neptune. But you compare that to Saturn, which is the opposite. Saturn is evidence, I want to touch it. I want to see it. I need proof. It doesn't exist in the imagination. It only exists in a 3D structure or form with Saturn. They're very opposite. They're opposite energies. So with them traveling together in Pisces, Neptune is stronger because Neptune's in the ruling planet of Pisces. So Neptune's going to be removing what Saturn has built, what Saturn has invested in, the ways that Saturn operates. So we're going to see that's why I'm saying there's more big endings in our physical world, because Neptune is taking them out to sea and is dissolving them, especially in 2025 and into 2026. So again, about a 2-year process. And it's a big deal when Saturn meets up with one of these outer planets. So as you were saying, Robin, yes, there are more transits between Neptune and Pluto because they move so slowly. And they only move a certain number of degrees in a calendar year. So we're going to have Neptune gets to 2 degrees of Aries in 2025 and then returns to Pisces, goes back to 29 degrees of Pisces the end of the year. Now, Pluto is now in Aquarius and will stay in Aquarius until 2044. And that's a different energy there that I'll touch on here in just a minute. But the Pluto energy has already transitioned as of November 19th, 2024, and remains in Aquarius. So we've been talking about Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries. And as they do so, they will be making beneficial connections called sextiles to Pluto, now in Aquarius, lighting us up with these new innovations, ideas, concepts, powerful transformational experiences. And, that sounds so vague. It sounds so vague, but it's also going to be different for every person. But it's interesting because it's also going to be collective. Pluto in Aquarius is the collective. So it's how we all use technology, our phones, new upgrades, new ways of working with the internet, social media, new ways of working with AI, the next version of AI, the next version of robotics, and all these things that have been in development and behind the scenes development are going to be coming forward into our collective consciousness more. So we're going to see more people like influencers demonstrating that they have a pet dog robot, or they have a robot in their home now, or it's kind of like when they first rolled out Siri or Alexa. This is the next version of that, and there's going to be more of that to come. More of the smart devices, more of the ways that we work faster, and that's going to be part of this change of our daily lives, is that we're going to have more technology in more places, certainly in places where there's more people. So think about going to events, gathering places, cultural centers, schools, education, more technology being brought into all these areas of our lives. I'm thinking about medicine, and hospitals and places we go to socialize, but also, buildings. I mean, it's a huge list of places. All of that is going to be evolving here in the next few years, especially.
Well, it helps even to hear it in this context, moving it out of some of the fear. I think
Yes.
that can also be here with this level of change. The other thing that I really hear that going to the unity consciousness is communications.
Yeah.
That is where the collective part of it comes in, and the unification comes in, is how all of this is going to affect communication, global communication.
Yeah. I know, I was thinking like, what's the next version of texting? Like, what's faster than texting? And what's going to be more immediate than that we can handle or that we would want that isn't too intrusive? Because, there's pros and cons with the new technologies. There's moral issues, there's ethical issues, there's a sense of, do I want this in my life or not? And then that brings up, well, what are my choices? Can I choose not to? So it's going to be interesting how all of this streams in, because we're going to see much faster communications, more immediate communications. We're going to expect it. I don't know about you, Colleen and Robin, but I like to take the weekends off. I don't want to be responding to emails or everything on the weekend. And I hope that doesn't go away. But with these technologies coming in, it's like people could have an expectation of, what is now the social standard in replying to people, for example.
Well, and in relation to your other point, there's also the continuation and maybe even the evolution of self-care, right? So in the replying to
Yeah.
people, as an example, that prioritization of
Mhm.
not doing that, because I'm the same as you for weekends, it's with my family, other than the few weekends that you work, but in
Yeah.
general, like I'm pretty protective of that time for
Yes.
myself and for my family and kid and all of that. And so but I also, I'm not really apologetic about that because it's what I need for self-care. And so I wonder too, at the same point, like we have this aspect of that replying to email, but then there's so many people that are like, but also I'm done with these cultural expectations that have been part of our systems for this many years. And how can we all collectively move into a different level of our cultural expectations and what we expect from each other too? And so many of
Yeah.
us are moving into that place of, well, no, I don't need to work that 80,
Yeah.
100 hour a week, if, so those kinds of
Mhm.
ideas.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to also how we can get these technologies and communications to work for us, such as
Yeah,
the
exactly.
wonders of an autoresponder, right? That just responds and gives people an understanding or sets expectations of, I'll be back in the office whenever. It comes down to, with these communications, how accessible do we want to be, and having the appropriate boundaries and making sure that we aren't, feeling always pulled and obligated into changing our lifestyle simply because the communications and technologies have changed. That we don't have to always adapt right away, that we have to be clear in, well, what is appropriate for me? What is good for my energy? What is best for my family? And what is best for me? So I think we're going to be testing these waters, and we're going to be figuring out that new formula for ourselves. There could be some, wonderful developments that come up. And actually, as we're saying that, I'm thinking, well, this is also where people could be pulling in more of these, the robots or the AI, or certain things that it's like, I would love to hand certain things over to AI that I don't want to do. But where's the boundary in that? But that's where we can honor our human needs and our ability to prioritize ourselves without feeling like we have to always be adapting to things that are changing so quickly.
Well, it's such a huge difference in energy going from Pisces to Aries.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there's other signs that are maybe Cancer to Leo, like there's other signs that are that big of a change, but like you said, also now returning to the beginning of the zodiac with these cycles and Neptune. But it's really cool actually that Jupiter comes in the summer too and brings in that Cancer energy, because that does feel like it's kind of anchoring in that authenticity. That does feel like it's kind of, like all of those things you said about it, of like, this is my house, this is me authentically living. And so you have these other energies with that technology that can help. But I think because of those things, there's also this in general, not necessarily astrologically, but in general, because of these things like AI being able to handle small things, there's also this move towards seeing each other in authentic ways, right?
Yeah,
Because AI is not authentic in a human capacity.
right.
It can help us in certain ways, but then we have this authenticity. So it feels like Jupiter is there kind of also helping us as humans come in into Cancer and help with that piece of it.
And Jupiter in Cancer will connect us to our emotional core,
Mhm.
make it easier to connect with people with how you're really feeling, what you really need. It's where you can say, yeah, it's actually been a really hard day, or I'm really exhausted and I don't want to make dinner. I'm going to get us some, takeout or something. It's kind of like, this is how I live my life in a very real way without trying to appear a certain way to others. And the Jupiter in Cancer is also about, it's actually your first tribe. And our first tribe is family. Whether you have a small family or big family, extended family, it typically relates to the nuclear family as Cancer, people you live with in your home. And so there's a return to, well, what does that feel like for me? So in June, as you said, Robin, that's the start of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, and vacations and school is out. And it could be a time of more family reunions or family gatherings or staycations, and not wanting to do maybe the thing that called to you a few years ago. It's like, well, I want to stay more home based, or do something that just feels better, feels safer. So I think we're going to have that need to look at, where are my genuine connections, and sort of like, who do I feel comfortable inviting into my home, because that's my family. Like, who's my soul family? You have like good friends, and I have my really good friends that I'm like, they'll come over early in the morning when I just woke up, and I'm like, come in, we'll have coffee, it's cool. Like, no one has to be properly presented. It's kind of like, who are you cozy with? Who is your family? And I feel like that's what we're going to be searching for in each other, because AI can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that occurred to me when you were talking about unity consciousness earlier, too, is it's something that we really work with Reiki, is the awareness that unity consciousness is also within us.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah.
one of the major healing things that we see is people having a feeling of being separate,
Mm.
and separate within themselves, separate from their spirit, separate from their soul, separate from the earth, separate from each other,
Mm-hmm.
separate from God,
Mm-hmm.
separate, just separation. And
Yeah.
so that unity consciousness also coming in on such a personal level
Mm-hmm.
feels like an awareness that can come through with all of these transits too, to help us feel, you even use the word belonging. We belong
Mm-hmm.
here, we belong in our own self, we belong where we are. And so it feels like these transits will really help us move into that self-awareness.
Absolutely. And, I think about the word, well, just the journey of separation, where, as a soul, we separate to incarnate as an individual, or when you are born, you're separating from the safety of the womb. You have to separate from the mother to become an individual. And so part of our journey is the separation back to connection, back to that feeling of, I am part of everything and all that is, as a separate being. And so how do I travel with a deeper connection, that deeper wisdom of what I'm holding as a separate being? And with the energy of this year, we're going to be seeking that and needing that. And we're also going to need more time to get clearer on what serves you best now, what is best for your energy that could surprise you and be a little bit different than your previous habits or practices. And that's part of the Aries new and the Aries new starts of who am I now? What really aligns with me now? And to honor that so that you are connecting with the correct people. You are willing to go into a new environment or a new space where you know that others have a shared passion or a shared interest. I think that's going to be really important in 2025, is seeking out those other individuals who that you can relate to, you have something in common with. And I see it too as we start these connections in like a higher frequency of choice. Like I'm choosing to connect with other healers. I'm choosing to connect with other astrology lovers or other people who have the shared passion. And we share that energy instead of feeling like, well, I have to be friends with this person because they live down the street or because my kids are friends. Like there's an energy here of your sovereign choice around the connections that serve you based on who you really are and bringing those people in. I think we're going to have a lot of that. I think those are going to be many of like these new communities that we're forming and we're seeking.
You also talked about the North Node.
Yes.
And that is in the same moving through Pisces also. Can you
Yes.
explain about that? I always get mixed up on the nodes.
Yes. So the North Node is going to be in Pisces starting in the middle of January, January 12th. And that means the South Node is going to be in the opposite sign of Virgo. And so the North Node is where we're growing. So it means that we're going to be growing into more of these Pisces themes that we've been discussing. We're growing into greater compassion for other beings. We're growing into ways of seeing how we're more similar than different, of reminding ourselves that, you know, there's other ways we can come together, love each other, accept each other. The Pisces energies are meant to take us into these new areas of growth. And so it brings up as well, you know, well, how do I deal with the parts of myself that I'm opening up to? So I feel like this relates to Reiki and energy practices where we're going to want to be more receptive to the higher frequencies, to the higher energy practices that support us, that we call in and we allow into our lives more often, more regularly. The lower expressions of Pisces we're going to have to manage. And that can be anything around feeling the separation or feeling a victim consciousness. That can be the parts of ourselves that feel powerless. So we're going to be moving through those energies as well. And then the opposite point, the South Node in Virgo, is where we're going to be cleaning up our lives, cleaning up the Virgo themes that relate to the body and the mind. And so we're going to be looking at, you know, what do I need to do that's better for my health now, my lifestyle, my well-being? Do I need a different exercise, a different workout or yoga practice? Do I need to incorporate more minerals, vitamins, herbs into my life? What am I doing every day that's taking up my energy? And is it still important? Is it worthwhile? The Virgo energy is very precise and analytical. It relates to logic and reasoning. So we're looking at, you know, am I overthinking something and it's taking me out of my intuition? Am I relying on something to be very clear before I trust it? So this dichotomy between the North Node and the South Node brings up, okay, I can move into trusting myself more and listening to my body consciousness at the same time. It's looking at how we work with both sides of the energy spectrum, if that makes sense.
Discernment
Mm-hmm.
and that ability. I think also just in my own body, my physical spaces, and that may
Mm-hmm.
also then all tie in with the Jupiter and Cancer. I'm just ready to let go and clear out in my physical space as well, which I think then also affects the personal. How long does the North Node stay in Pisces? What does that look like?
18 months.
Oh,
So
long time.
yeah, so it starts in January 2025 and goes until July 2026. So we'll be talking about that a lot because of it. It's a 18-month journey, and it is working with it's the lunar nodes, and it changes the eclipses. So as we move into the year, we have eclipses, one eclipse in Aries, two eclipses in Virgo, and one eclipse in Pisces. So when the nodes change signs, the eclipses change as well.
Oh, interesting. Well, it actually feels kind of good that you said 18 months. It's like, okay, I have 18 months to kind of navigate through this clearing out. It took some of the feeling of urgency,
Yes. Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
into a little bit more like, okay, I can, be very conscious with my choices in those two areas.
Yes, exactly. Very intentional there.
Yeah.
And that will be important. The other thing I wanted to touch on too, that's also important in 2025, is that Uranus is changing signs and moving into Gemini. And that happens on July 7th, 2025. So the second half of the year. And Uranus is the disruptor. It is the liberator, the awakener. It's about doing something wild and different. It's the brilliant scientist, the genius in each of us. It's the part of us that wants to be very fresh and new, doesn't want to follow the rules, is not interested in tradition. So as Uranus moves into Gemini, Gemini is very active, buzzy, cerebral, fast moving. And this is going to activate a lot more ideas, innovations, solutions, breakthroughs. This is part of what we are talking about with our daily lives speeding up with communications and how we're integrating more technologies into our daily lives as well. So that's going to be very fast moving with this Uranus moving into Gemini. And it also works with our neurological programming, how we think, how our brains are changing with these new technologies, even with, like, say, TikTok videos being so fast and so short. That affects how we think. That affects our attention span and our ability to focus. And these aren't always great things, but this is part of how everything that's coming in is working with us, shifting us on a daily level, shifting us in terms of how we think, what we perceive, what we're taking in. And I feel that Uranus and Gemini is one of the biggest energies of 2025 because of how it's going to really quicken our pace of life. It relates to transportation. There's going to be new transportation methods. Maybe you're seeing this in your city or hometown. There's going to be different versions of, like, say, bicycles or motorcycles or road traffic. There's already the driverless cars. There's driverless Uber vehicles. I don't think I would get in that vehicle. I'm not ready for a driverless Uber. But those are the kinds of things that are happening now, and they're going to be more commonplace into next year and beyond.
Well, because Uranus is that will be in Gemini for a long time, right?
Yeah, 7 years.
7
So
years, right?
it's going to move into Gemini, and then it returns back to Taurus. So it does the same thing that we were talking about with Saturn and Neptune. So it moves into Gemini. It gets to, I believe, 2 degrees of Gemini, then retrogrades back into Taurus. So it will be in Taurus in 2026 as well. So it's just a sampler. It's sampling 2 degrees of Gemini here in 2025, and then fully moves into Gemini in 2026. But again, it brings in more action, changes, diversity. It's a very dynamic energy that we'll be working with as well in 2025. And I feel like it's going to be very buzzy. It has a very buzzy frequency.
That's so interesting because it feels opposite of that Jupiter in Cancer then.
Yes.
So it's that same thing. It feels like there's a lot of navigating through 2025, through these changes, and that again, what is the how to
Yeah.
in navigating it all, and being able to stay in a more clear mind, maybe more. I think the word that's coming to me is to try as much as possible to not be as reactive.
Mm.
To how do we stay in a place of clarity, and yet at the same times, reactivity can be beneficial because suddenly we're like, oh, this is it. So I don't know, which feels very Uranus also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So the
it's
year
fascinating.
2025 highlights 3 elements. So we have strong water with Cancer and Pisces. We have strong fire with Aries. And then we have strong air with Uranus and Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. So we have water, fire, air all highlighted. We're missing the 4th element, which is earth. So this is where we're actually going to have to be more intentional and seek that out for ourselves, to seek out the grounding practices, to get quiet, to look for peace, to honor stillness, to come back into, the slowdown and the ability to look at, well, what's practical, not just what's exciting or what is sexy and innovative and I want to do it, but what's practical, what makes sense for my life and for my world, what would last, what would serve me long term, not just buying something quickly and then I'm done with it. It reminds me of when the iPod music players first came out. It was like the first generation of those, and I had one, and it was so cool. But I remember it was like you had to download the music from the iTunes platform, and after a while, they came out with the 2nd generation, the 3rd generation. Like they improved it really rapidly, and then it became outdated really quickly. So I think with all of these fast moving changes, we're going to have to be very clear on where do I put my resources? Do I buy the first thing? Do I buy this because everyone has it? Or do I wait? Do I save my money? Do I hold off for a bit? So we're going to have to be very aware of our money, our resources, of what really makes sense, not just what is flashy and interesting and everyone on the block has it. We're going to have to seek out those earth qualities of being more grounded and realistic. Because as we were talking about, Robin, like just protecting even weekend time or family time. We don't want to surrender that. We don't want to give those things up. So I think that we can have a deeper connection to what we really value, if we're aware of that.
Mhm. Well, this is just, I love your presentation of the energies too, because it feels so like more in the what we can do than the struggle of the changes,
Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
navigate through. There are struggles, and I was thinking about as we're making our own choices about who we are near and with, other people will be making those same choices,
Yeah.
and they will be choosing, and it may not include us.
Right.
And so I think you brought that up in one of the other podcasts, and I remember thinking about that like, oh yeah, and as much as possible to really have the perspective that even though it may feel personal, it really isn't. It really is that that person needs to make that choice.
Yes.
This one, and it's not necessarily as personal as it may feel.
Right. And it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with their sovereign path, where their energy is at, what choices are presenting, where they need to go for their truth. It can be something that, yeah, when we detach from it, and don't feel that it's personal, it can give us peace around understanding that the energy is changing and shifting. And it can happen fast with, many people in our lives, but people are making choices based on where they're at, and has absolutely nothing to do with you or nothing to do with any of us, but about where they're at and what they need. And I feel like that's going to become more evident, as we continue to move through these energies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other way to think about it in the sense of, really moving into the place of as much as possible being able to observe where
Mm,
we are
yeah.
while we are navigating it and the feelings that go with it. And, one of the things I always talk about is the recognition that, I do have human consciousness, so I have duality of
Hmm.
consciousness.
Yes.
And I can be in one state of being that is more stable, more aware, more conscious, and I can have feelings that are different than that in the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And they're not, we always want it to be that the feeling matches that higher level, but,
Yeah.
real life is that we can be in a duality of the internal knowing and the external feeling, or well, it's not
Yes.
necessarily external feeling, but you know what I'm saying, the
Yeah.
duality of our own way of being, being
And
human.
it's oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
It's that being in the acceptance of our and, right? Where it's like, I understand this is happening and I don't like it. Or I understand, I can be aware of this and be sad about it. Or I'm accepting of one thing and the energy makes me angry, or and I feel this grief, or and so I feel like that's a beautiful way to practice our self-compassion and our humanness. And it's just so real. We live in a very complex world, and we are complex beings. So that was so beautifully shared, Colleen. Yes, thank you, because that can validate people for, the various things that they're feeling at different levels of their world.
Well, and having, again, that word discernment is coming in because that's something that I think Reiki energy really helps with. But having the discernment, because sometimes the feelings, you can move to the state of being. So let's say, okay, I'm aware, I'm observing, and I'm in this state of being aware that I'm observing, but my feeling is anger.
Mm.
Well, I know that we talk about letting go of anger, but sometimes it has information that we
Oh
need to
yeah,
be noticing. And the
yeah.
feelings also need to be acknowledged with discernment when they are opposite of that internal knowing.
Hmm.
And, like the higher consciousness of the discernment. So I notice even when I say the words, for me, stay stable, be kind, I had to learn that kind can also be have a lot of authority in what that means for me. Kind can have
Hmm.
boundaries. Kind
Hmm.
can say the things that are necessary to say. And so that duality of, you know, I'm so appreciative of this conversation because it gives me the opportunity to notice that these will be these influences that we're navigating through individually and collectively. Because these big planets moving, whew,
It's a
Pluto
big
moving
deal.
into Aquarius, Saturn, and and uh,
Uranus and Neptune,
and Neptune all moving
all
into
the outer
these
planets.
other. Those are
Jupiter
big.
too. Yeah.
That's big.
Well, and just the fact that they all move at a different speed in a different cycle, and they're all syncing up.
Yeah.
Jupiter
Right.
takes 12 years to change. Well, yeah, to move through the full zodiac. Jupiter changes signs every year, so that's not as significant. But Saturn is on a 30-year cycle. Neptune 165. Uranus 84 years, and it takes Pluto 248. It's like, and to have each one move at a different speed and each one all moving into a new sign, into fire and air, except for Jupiter moving into water. It's like this very pivotal message from the universe, from the cosmos, that change is happening, change is here, and we can know that, and we can, be consciously aware of it in our brains, but then we're living it. And it's like there's different parts of ourselves that are dealing with these change all at once. So we are like having to integrate all these different levels of energies and experiences. And it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. So it's about not feeling overwhelmed by it, going into the grounding practices, but knowing that this is what we're moving into. There's going to be new chapters for all of us. Every person on the planet is going to have new beginnings. And that goes to what you were saying, Colleen, about people making choices. They're choosing their new beginning. Maybe they're choosing it over here, not over there. We're going to see a lot up in the air, and we're going to see a lot of fast moving advancements. So it's going to be quite exciting, but also back to where we started our conversation, the Pisces influence is also going to be present, revealing what is closing out and ending on the planet. And that can be emotional and something that requires, our own spiritual practices to move through.
I want to circle back to the word discernment again, because as you were speaking of, other people's choices, that if we can, one of the things in my own spiritual practices has been around the word judgment. And what does that mean for me? Because I also, a lot of times I hear people in these practices, I want to let go of judgment. And then I think of on the opposite of, oh, that person has no judgment. So
Yeah.
I've seen both things. And so where I landed in my own spiritual growth and develop around it, which is ongoing, but to move it out of judgment and into discernment. And for me, that has been really helpful to be aware of, that I can use discernment more effectively than judgment, in the sense of judging other people's choices, and discernment about what that means for me, how I navigate through those choices, but having the discernment around it. The other one I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is a topic you've thought about, but what came through several years ago in some of my journeys and our journeys was the awareness that the electromagnetic fields are actually a fifth element. And just like earth, air, fire, and water, because we are just really becoming aware of them, that this fire and air may be really moving us into an awareness of moving of understanding the electromagnetic fields. And so the way it came through was the awareness that the elements don't actually have they're neutral. So fire is neutral. We can innovate with fire in ways that support us, heat us. We can use it for food, things like that, and light, and then fire can be completely destructive. And it personally doesn't have an agenda around that. It's just fire. And the same thing with each of the other elements, and how the electromagnetic fields are also neutral as an element that we are just now innovating with and in, and we're in the infancy of it. So I'm just, like I say, it may be something that, it's kind of, others are probably talking about it too, but it's just an awareness with this idea of where these planets are and this innovation, that it may be really, we will really come to understand the element of the electromagnetic fields.
Well, that's so timely and perfect, because that demonstrates exactly the new awareness that we're going to have, the new forms of awareness and understandings that we're going to arrive at that our human consciousness never knew before. And that's certainly a Uranus and Gemini advancement. That's also the Pluto in Aquarius, collective consciousness. So breakthroughs in, how we understand the cosmos, energetics, scientific discoveries, engineering, on and on. All of that is going to be going into these crazy, wild new fields. But I think that's a perfect example, Colleen, of the types of things we're going to be understanding. We're going to have more information about world history, the history of this planet, and we're going to be having more understandings of non-humans, extraterrestrials and off-planetary beings. And
What a time for her to freeze. Because I wanted to ask about that, but we had never discussed it before. So we'll go
Yeah.
ahead and just give it a minute as she's coming back.
There she is.
Molly, you froze right as you were saying the off-planet beings, extraterrestrials, and I so wanted to bring that up, but we've never talked about it before, so I didn't know where you were with it. So,
oh, awesome.
and then you
Okay.
froze right at that point, and we're all going.
That was my cliffhanger. I practiced
Yeah.
that beforehand. Yes, the off-planetary beings, aliens, more discoveries around the experiments that have been going on the planet and the oceans above our heads. Of course, Space Force and all the various experiments that they're involved in, and what's going on with galactic energies, all of that. We could file it under disclosure, but all of that is going to be coming in as more mainstream, as more regular updates and things that are discussed, and information is shared, and what's been classified is no longer classified. All of that is part of our human consciousness expansion. All of that is going to be brand new information that, for some people, it's going to be very shocking and mind-blowing, and other people are going to feel very confirmed that, okay, I knew this was happening, or I had a cousin or someone who worked at one of these bases who saw this. Like we're going to be hearing more of these wild stories about people who have had contact with other beings. I mean, these stories have existed for so long. There's tons of stuff, on YouTube. There's a lot going on about people sharing their own experiences. But it's going to become more common.
Well, it's so
Definitely.
fascinating because just last week, the whole UAP discussion in Congress, and there's hardly any reaction.
Yeah.
It's so it's so fascinating, and including myself. Like I say, the way you said it, of the confirmation of, yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I thought that was true, and of course it's nice to have the confirmation, but I've always
And
thought
so
that
the
was true.
next level will be actually seeing and encountering aliens, or like literally like having experiences with them. I think that's where I think that's going to happen. I really think that's going to happen. I think that's what the energies is about. I mean, we're not the only conscious species in our solar system or in this galaxy. It's like, it's not just us hanging out here. So I think we're going to have more contact. And I know there's movies about that. So I think that's what's going to be really interesting. It's going to feel like, are we living in a sci-fi movie? No, this is our new reality. Our reality is much grander than we've been led to believe.
Well, I think I do feel like I'm in a sci-fi reality right now.
Yeah,
It's a little bit like, there are definitely the days of do 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 do.
right. It's true. That's the norm, right? That's our new experience on the planet. But yeah, we're definitely going to be having that um and more and more. I mean, it's so hard to predict because this energy is very fast moving. The advancements, are hard to predict or to know exactly what to expect. So I guess going back to what we've been touching on, we need community. We need people to go to who understand us. We need connections that are real. We need self-care and energetic management so that we can handle all of this, so that we can deal with it and feel grounded. Coming back to the lack of earth element, to come back into our bodies, listen to ourselves, tune into what we need. All of that is going to be more important than ever as these energies pick up in 2025.
I
Wow.
really appreciate you talking about the earth energy so that I'm self-aware, and I'm very late degree Pisces. So I've been in this Neptune and all these transits for a while with everything from, you know, 19 degrees all the way up into 28 degrees. So for
Oh,
me, I'm very uh, used to some of these energies, and I think I will personally feel the bump and the
yeah,
navigation as these different planets change.
yeah,
Having a heads up is like, okay, this is what this is. What can I
exactly.
do? What tools do I have? What are like you say, the energetics for everyone, regardless of which ones you use, which ones they are. I
Right.
always say, like my brother-in-law is not spiritual, but he just rode his bike from Canada to Mexico and back up here to Oregon. And, he's like 65 years old, and that's how he connects, you know?
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, exactly. So I always think of it as it's so true for each person how that works for them,
Yes.
and how each of us finds our own way and what tools we have as we go through this time that many of us believe we consciously incarnated to be here to assist in these big
Yes.
transformational times.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we will have our human experiences, our human emotions and duality and needs and all of that. And we'll be aware that in the higher perspective, in that unity consciousness, that everything's right on time, everything serves a purpose. We are always traveling with our power, that we have our power at an individual level, regardless of anything going on and shifting and changing outside of us. And to go there, to connect to that part of you, that very ancient, wise part of you who knows this has always been true on your journey. That can be one thing that you can beautifully embrace and know for yourself.
Deep Neptune.
Yeah.
Well, Molly, wow. Thank
Yeah,
you so
wow.
much.
You're
2025 is certainly going to be an interesting year, planetary wise and individually. So this has been super helpful to kind of know what's coming, when it's coming, even though, like you said, not specific dates. We can get there late when we get closer, but
yeah.
those seasons to know when and kind of where to expect these big changes to come through. So as always, you're such a wealth of information, and we appreciate you being here and letting our audience know and and also how we can move through it with grace and ease as much as possible. So,
Yes, yes. Well, I appreciate it as well. I always love talking with both of you, and it's an honor to connect with your audience, who I know doing important work right now in their communities, in their families, in their homes, wherever they are. It matters right now. It really does. And
Yeah.
I did want to mention that if they wanted to learn more about astrology for the year ahead, like if you wanted to understand more specifically how 2025 energies that we've been talking about work for you in your chart, I have an online course that goes through the specifics even more,
right.
that goes through the energies we've touched on, but helps you apply it to your chart. So if anyone listening, if they want to go into more of the astrology, they can find it on my website, mollymccord.online. It's the 2025 Soul Growth Astrology Program, and you can use coupon code 2025 to get it for $44. And it's 13 pre-recorded videos and webinars. And it's broken down by topic, and it's meant to be something you come back to throughout the year and look at how it's showing up in your chart, like where the Mercury retrogrades are, where the planets are moving, all of that. It's designed to help you understand how these energies work with you more personally. So I've been doing this program for like 5 years now, this annual program, because of how it assists people in seeing in their own chart how all these energies are working with them, so they can get a grip on it and get a heads up. So I wanted to offer that and share that with the intention that it would help people.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
go
so
ahead and
glad you mentioned it.
yeah, I have
Thank
Neptune
you.
in Capricorn at 1 degree and Uranus in Sagittarius. So it's a little later. It's 13 degrees. I'm like, okay, I better look at that. So I am going to be doing that course. We'll
Yeah.
go
Okay,
ahead and put the link in the description and then the coupon code of 2025 as well. So
great.
thank you
Yeah.
very much for that.
And
It's
hold
Yeah.
your book up one more time too, because
Oh,
I
oh
think
yeah.
when you were talking about it at the beginning, I thought, well, that would be so helpful to have like a journal that, is specific.
and so it's called a workbook, but there's no like blank pages.
Yeah.
It just gives you different exercises to
Yeah.
do and tips and all that. So so that people know that it's something they can turn to when they're looking to improve something or approach it in a new way. So yeah, so thank you for letting me share that. I'm excited about this book. I really hope it assists people.
And what's the name of your course one more time?
2025 Soul Growth Astrology.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, great. That
thank
that
you.
is very inspiring. I thought to
Yes.
have something to apply it to my own chart.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, yes, that's the intention, and that's what makes it personal, and that's how astrology comes alive, because then you can see what's going on in your chart. And if this is all new to you, I do have an introductory astrology course. If anyone is like brand new, it's over my head, I don't know what you're talking about. The introductory course could help to get you situated and into the language of astrology.
Well, even for those of us that are, I would say I'm intermediate. Even though
Hmm.
it's been years, I've been listening around it. My mother was into astrology in the 70s, so it's been something in my
So
field,
cool.
and I'm still only intermediate with it. So I think even reading some of the beginner stuff is always still a refresher, like, okay, yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, it's always good to come back to the basics. There's always good stuff to remember or to see differently. So, I mean, I there's times I consider myself a beginner, and I've been doing it for decades, because you have to come back to the essentials and revisit those and build from there. So, yeah, it's a wonderful way to reacquaint yourself with the language.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank
And we
you.
just appreciate you coming here and sharing your insights and knowledge with all of us and with our listeners. And thank you to the listeners. We are all about community. I know Molly is all about community, and so join us in our distance Reiki share that's free every Tuesday morning, and it's on ReikiLifestyle.com. You can find everything. Oh, Molly, one more thing. I don't think you mentioned what your social media stuff is.
Oh, my Instagram. I'm on Instagram at MoxieMolly11 Astrology. I'm on Facebook. I have actually 2 Facebook pages. One is Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord, and one is Molly McCord. It's because I started those at 2 different times. And then my YouTube is Molly McCord Astrology. And those are the main platforms that I use.
Okay. And mostly they'll be able to find you on your website and go
Yes,
from there.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you to everyone who listened, and thank you to Colleen and Robin. As always, it's an honor to connect with you and to have these important conversations.
Well, you're welcome. All right, Robin, are we complete?
We are. Yes.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Oh, and for anybody listening, one more thing. We have our Next Step Reiki registration. Next Step Reiki and 12 Heavens courses. Registration is online now. Those are year-long courses, and you can check out more on ReikiLifestyle.com.